Boom! What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Mount Mograph. As always, my name's Matt, and in today's video we have a super cool little technique that we're gonna go over. It is called the Insane Frank Miller Renders. As dumb as the name is, the technique is awesome. If you don't know who Frank Miller is, he's this incredibly famous comic book artist whose style is very distinct. It focuses on negatives, white and black, the use of space, and kind of leaves a lot of it up to the user to, or not the user, the viewer to see what they're actually seeing. So if you don't know who he is, he's done Sin City, he's done Batman, he's done The Spirit, horrible movie, and tons of other ones. But as you can see, it's a lot of this kind of negative look. So he does all his illustrations hand-drawn, incredibly talented, like I say, and takes tons and tons of time to do them, I'm sure. And it all has these little details. So we're going to go ahead and mimic this Frank Miller style inside Cinema 4D and put together a really cool little rig to really control all of the parts of the scene. So as you can see here, here's just a little example of this head, but we kind of have that Frank Miller style, and we're going to go over a couple ways to achieve this effect, also with animation. So let's go ahead and create a new project here. And just start by putting some object in the scene. You're not going to want like a primitive like a square. If you can, go on into your sculpting folder and just grab something. So why don't we work with a velociraptor, because that is super cool. And I'm actually going to scale this up a touch and check him out. He is pretty sweet. So we're going to work with this today. We're not going to do the whole sculpting or anything like that. We'll just work with something that already exists to keep things nice and easy. But I'm going to show you all the render options and how to set up this really cool light rig to get this Frank Miller style. So first things first, why don't we go ahead and delete our material in our project and also on our velociraptor. Seems silly at first, but I promise this is what we want. And hop into our render options, and we're going to change a couple things. So by default, I always have ambient occlusion on. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off, go up into my anti-aliasing and turn my level to best and my minimum level to 4x4, maximum level to 8x8. So this doesn't really matter that much. I just like to keep with this effect things really sharp. So anti-aliasing really fixes that, and it still will render super quick. So no worries at all with cranking those settings up. So let's go ahead and see what's going on with this scene. So I'm going to do Command R to preview this, and you're going to see we indeed have a velociraptor. It looks super bad. So obviously we're going to want to add lights. And the way we're going to add lights is to get this Frank Miller style. So the first thing we're going to want to do is select all of the objects. As you can see, mine are nested. If yours aren't nested, just select them all, or wait a second, and we're going to connect them all and delete them. So this is now just a single object. It's not all these little objects. And we can go and position him around the scene or just check him out. So I'm going to go ahead and call this little dude Dino, or Dion. That's actually even better. I may as well add an E and roll with it. So Dion, the velociraptor, is about to get the Frank Miller render style. And I called it insane because it really is so cool once you see the power of what we're going to do. So this was a happy accident. Let's go ahead and add a light to the scene. So earlier this week, I was playing around with rendering, and I ended up accidentally cranking up one of my lights to just an insane level, and I started to get these really nutty blowout lines, as you can see. So even like that, we kind of are starting to get that Frank Miller style, and this is what gave me the idea to start. So I promise there's more to this video than just, oh yeah, we're going to turn our light up to 2000, and there you go. We'll have a lot of fun with it. So as you can see, when I move this around the scene, we're starting to get this really interesting way to view objects, and it looks like a 2D thing. Someone could have drawn this and they would have been really talented, but obviously we're not doing that. We're just doing 3D, and it looks cool. So as I was playing with this, I realized that, you know, we don't have that much control over the shadow other than where you position your light. So in order to get that Frank Miller style that we talked about, who really focuses on like the smaller details and really getting into specific things on these characters, I realized that like that's really important. We gotta hit up those shadows. So let's go ahead and create a little rig, and I'm going to show you just how fun and powerful this little rig is by using something called user data. So let's name this first light light, I guess, and we're going to go ahead and just duplicate the light, and I'm going to call this dark. So what you'd think is that we would just go ahead and switch the color of our light to black and we would be in good shape. But as you can see, this is doing less than nothing in the scene. It's tiring out my finger and nothing is changing on Dion. So that obviously doesn't work. So let's go ahead and set our color back to 0. And actually, we're going to do something that Dumbledore does from those movies where he kind of steals light. We're going to go ahead and steal light. So if we set our intensity down to like -1500, we're actually going to be taking that color from the scene, which is super interesting. So this gives you a ton of control over where your shadows are on Dion. We can go ahead and take away shadows. We can duplicate this and really focus on those small details, like I said, while also going in and duplicating the light and repicking up details. So what you can do with this whole thing is, and also if you crank up your dark settings or your light settings, you can take away more. So as you can see, just like that, I'm already starting to have an incredible amount of control over the details of our little model. So let's go ahead and make this even easier to work with by creating a little user data rig. I'm going to go ahead and delete the light and dark copies and just keep the original two. It's always best to have the originals, and we're going to select them both and put them into a new null, Alt-G on your keyboard. So I'm going to call this the Frank Miller render rig. Ooh, that just flows off the tongue perfect. And let's click either the light or the dark lights and go into the option called project right here. We're going to right click our objects and go down to user data and say copy user data interface, and click back up into your Frank Miller render rig. And in your null object in the top here, click user data and go down to add user data. We're going to first delete this little thing called data, and we're going to make our own group because we want to name this something cool, like the Frank Miller render options. That's actually not cool at all. I'm sorry about that. And I actually just put some nutty little slash in there and I canceled out. So I'm going to go into manage user data. Click my Frank Miller render options, right click and say paste, and you're going to see that the object thing we copied is now right here. So that's all we're going to have to do. We'll keep it nice and easy, and I'm going to say OK. So what we've done is basically set up something that will be able to control these two options just from our null. So when we have tons of lights, we don't have to worry about going and switching every option. So let's go make this a driver. We're going to right click it, go down to user interface, or sorry, expressions, and say set driver. And then we're going to highlight both the light and dark lights and click the object here, right click and go down to expressions, set driven absolute. We want that to change explicitly. So there we go, we're all set up, and I'm going to also, while I'm there, change my mode to include. So we're only going to be able to grab the objects, and I can minimize this, only going to be able to grab the objects that are in our Frank Miller render option. So I'm going to drop Dion into there, and you're going to see that all of a sudden he's lit up like a Christmas tree, or a Frank Miller Christmas tree dinosaur. I don't know where that was going. So now we can go ahead and just duplicate these lights and drag them around and start to pick up all kinds of cool details on Dion. And why we set up this rig is because now we can duplicate Dion, and we'll call this one Simone, and we'll drag out Simone, and you're going to see that Simone has no lights at all on him or her. I don't know what Simone is, but maybe I'll make him a little bit smaller. So that's kind of sad. He's totally not in the scene, and if you want to have him join the scene, all you have to do is duplicate your Frank Miller render rig, drag it out here, and then what we're going to do is just undo Dion, and we're going to drop in Simone, and then we can go ahead and move our render rig over to Simone. I'm losing track of the names. I probably shouldn't have picked something so crazy, and now we can only control him. So what we can do is build entire cities or towns or something like that and really nail all those little details by using this technique of building your little Frank Miller render rig. And it's super, super easy. So let's go ahead and do another cool thing. I'm going to delete everything except the Frank Miller render rig. And we're going to go and just check out how you can use this technique with animation. So let's go and create a plane. You are going to need the simulation suite. I think for cloth, it's pretty easy, but most versions have it. I think that our studio for Cinema 4D. And we're going to make our width and height segments to 100 here, just like that. And then we're going to go ahead and press C on our keyboard to make this object editable, not edible, and go into your right view go into your point selection mode, switch your mode to rectangle selection. We're going to right click our plane object and go down to simulation tags and click the cloth tag. Then we're going to go over to the dresser and we're going to say dress mode. We're going to check that. And then we're going to go ahead and just select the top little bunch of points there. So just that top row, we're going to go under fixed points and click set, and it's going to turn purple if you did it right. If not, you probably did something wrong. So let's go out of the dress mode here, and you're going to notice our tag is in gray and it's going to switch to blue when we click this. So let's do that. And we have a nice blue little plane. I'm going to go back into my perspective view here, and I'm going to press play on my timeline, and you're going to see that we have this wonderful cloth in our scene. And so why did we do this? Well, first off, we're going to have to drop our plane. I'm going to actually name this nice cloth. We're going to have to drop that into our Frank Miller render rig because it's in our objects here. So I'm going to drop the cloth in there, and you're going to see we're already starting to pick up those cool cloth details. So why don't we move this rig over? It was sized up for those dinosaurs. And I'm going to click my display to Quran shading so we can really see what's going on. And you're going to see we're starting to get, once again, a really cool comic booky style. I'm actually going to go into my timeline and switch this to 10 seconds so we have a little bit longer bit to work with. Go into my cloth tag here and go to my cache and just say cache mode. Click that and say calculate it. Sure, wait for this a second just so I can scrub the timeline and not have to worry about having play from the beginning every time. So now I can go ahead and just scrub this and see what the heck's going on with this cool cloth. So I did this to show that you can actually take this cloth and it's animated, it's all simulated, and this would be a nightmare to illustrate. But as you can see, even with this render, just on the without even playing around with the lights, you're starting to get that style. So let's go into our rig and play around a little bit to try to bring out a bit more of this cloth. Maybe move that over, duplicate this and drag that over. I might turn up my darkness a lot, so I'll do this. It's going to look different in the viewport, and when I render it, it should look completely different. And then I might want to duplicate my light and just drag this down over here, maybe. And let's see, maybe turn my general down a lot. And we just want to pick up more of the details. So now what I can do is kind of create that Batman cape or something like that. Really, really easy. It's not finding a good spot yet. Well, as you can kind of see in the details, you can get that Batman cape look or whatever you want super easy just by using this little rig we just made. And you can also go ahead and render this out, and I think I did a render. No, I did not do a render. Well, you can render this out if you spend a little bit more time with the light rig, and you can just start to get these really cool comic style illustrations. So anyway, that was it for today. We covered the Frank Miller illustration style. I think it was kind of fun. We met Dion and Simone and all that, and yeah, I hope you have fun with this technique, and that's about it. Catch you guys later. Thanks for checking out Mount MoGraph. Like, subscribe, give a high five.